Thank you for joining us today on the Sun Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Bankston of CIO.legal. We specialize in technology management for solo practicing and small practice law firms. Today, I'm joined by Colin Levy. Colin is a prominent figure in the legal tech world, known for his insightful blog articles, books, and active presence on LinkedIn. Colin's the author of The Legal Tech Ecosystem, Innovation, Advancement, and the Future of Law Practice. This is a book I owned and have turned to several times over the past year in the context of running a solo legal tech practice. It covers different types of legal technology, popular myths, innovation and adoption challenges, strategies for success and improvement, and it showcases contributions from more than 50 well-known legal technology thought leaders Colin knows well through his work and online presence. Colin's also the co-author of CLM for Dummies, and for my ALA listeners, this CLM is not your certification track, but rather stands for Contract Lifecycle Management, a topic where Colin is an undisputed authority, having spent much of his career focused on contracts, and is demonstrated by his position as the director of legal at Malbec, a prestigious legal tech company that specializes in contract management systems and also a good wine. Colin, I am so glad you're here. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me. Really looking forward to this conversation.
Absolutely. And sorry I said your last name wrong. I worked with some attorneys with the last name Levy and tend to say that Colin's last name is actually Levy. So quick correction and sorry about that. Colin, I'm curious why you chose the in-house counsel path.
An interesting question. It kind of goes back to an experience I had prior to law school. I worked for a year for a big law firm in New York City as a paralegal because I wanted to get some work experience before I began law school, but also wanted to better understand the big law world. And it was through that experience that further reinforced my view or my desire to not work for a big law firm, mainly because I just wasn't really into the idea of recording time, tracking my hours, and fighting over timesheets. And in addition, at least at the time, even though if I was working as a paralegal, I was working really long hours. I didn't have any real control over my schedule, and I wanted to have more control. And quite frankly, from a more professional perspective, I also wanted to be in a position where I could better see the impact I was having as a lawyer. And so working in-house really allowed for me to achieve that, while also really getting to know the business quite well. And it was that also I found compelling to work in-house.
That's very interesting. I'm not an attorney myself, so I don't have the experience of law school, and my experience working in big firms has always been from the staff side. But I want to make sure my understanding is correct. So in-house counsel, that's going to typically be like a salaried Monday to Friday, 40-hour-a-week job in the ideal space, of course, but as opposed to like 60 hours when you don't know if you're actually billing all of those hours or getting paid for the ones you bill, et cetera. It seems like a much less stressful career choice, like career path.
I would say that it can be. The hours typically are less than for big law, but depending on the company and where you work, aren't necessarily always the case. But what tends to be the case is, yes, you're salaried, so there isn't any billable hour requirement that you have to meet. So that sorts of stress doesn't exist. And in general, I found it to be a rewarding career path, and one that is not stress-inducing by and large. But also, I think, given the stage of my career, it also is less stressful than it was when I first started working as a lawyer, when I realized after graduating that I didn't exactly know what I was doing, despite the fact that I had graduated from law school and passed the bar.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm interested how social media has influenced your professional journey.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I am not, some people call me an influencer. I tend to push back against that description because I'm not one of those types that, is on socials and constantly, promoting or hawking one product or another. So not really an influencer in that sense. But I more use social media to help, I guess, sell ideas and concepts around legal tech, around how to use tech, around how to understand it, around how to overcome your fear of technology. And I think I was drawn to social media to do that because I had initially used a variety of platforms, including LinkedIn, to kind of find my way in legal tech once I started wanting to learn more about it. And by that, I mean reaching out to folks who were either teaching about legal tech or creating products or trying to create products or who had already done so and want to engage with these people to try to understand their reasons for doing so, their journeys, what they had learned. And then as I started growing more well versed in the space, I wanted to share some of my own thoughts and comments on it.
Hmm.
And I think it's just through that social media became this important method for me to connect with others. But I don't really view it as sort of again, as some way of trying to hawk something or sell something or influence something. It's
Hmm.
more a matter of me just trying to support the community. And I find the community
Right.
is fairly active online. And so that's where I go to support them.
When did you make the decision to start your own blog and posting articles there?
Well, I've always enjoyed writing. Writing for me has always been therapeutic. It's always been something that I found very relaxing and a way of just getting thoughts in my own head. So I started writing articles mainly as a way of both kind of helping to unwind and relax, but also sharing some of the thoughts and lessons I've learned through these conversations I had with others. Because I initially had started just sharing interviews and then it turned into writing sort of more longer thought pieces and having others contribute pieces as well. And so I find that it's a good way to explore ideas and concepts and help show others um, what there is to learn through, a way that I find beneficial for myself as well as hopefully for others.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know I've gotten a lot out of the legal tech ecosystem. So, is it true that the legal tech ecosystem kind of grew out of your blog? Is it like a collection of articles from the blog, or is it more of a collection of people from the blog that got together to write the book?
So initially, it started. The idea behind the book initially was provide this high level kind of introduction to world legal tech through some of the stories that I had gleaned from interviews I had done of other folks. And so it started out as kind of a collection of some of the bits and pieces of those interviews. And then I realized that there was more that needed to be included or I wanted to include. So it became more than just that. But certainly, the bread and butter of the book really is snippets of conversations I've had with others who have done really some cool things in this space because I found personally that one of the best ways to learn is through hearing the stories of others who have done things in the space. And so that really is kind of what underlies the book in many ways.
Got it. Yeah, I found it very helpful understanding kind of how legal technology and legal ops works together, how those disciplines are different and the same. Often I kind of see them used online or see professionals identifying one way or the other or both. Um, when I originally grabbed the book, just based off the system, legal tech ecosystem, I thought it was going to tell me more about what conferences to go to, what groups to join, like the community of people that are in legal technology. But it seems it's more about how that technology and processes and people work together, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for kind of a list of conferences to go to or other types of events to go to or people to follow, I have resources I can suggest for that. But really, the
Oh
book
yeah.
is meant to be essentially a sort of a sort of introduction to the space, and it touches upon various elements that make up the space. And called it the legal tech ecosystem because I view legal tech really as an ecosystem of not just technology, but of people, of processes, and of businesses and technology all working together, but also influencing one another and being dependent upon one another. And I want people to get a sense of the forest as well as the trees that make up the forest, if you will. And so
Hmm.
that's really kind of the main theme of the book, because I'm very much a believer in this sort of concept of interconnectedness. And I very much see that play out in a variety of ways within legal tech.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, the book is great, and that topic is incredible. I'll definitely come back to what you brought up about the conferences. I think that our audience could take some notes there. But yeah, I mean, the ecosystem of legal technology. I just think about it through my experience working in the staff side of large am law firms and from service providers. It's interesting to see where that is absolutely true, all of the technology and people working together. It's also interesting to see where it's very much not true, like the technology that lives in the silo of one practice group or one office, and the rest of the firm like doesn't really touch it because, well, they're in a different practice group, so they have no reason to, or even if it's just because of the different attorneys that maybe came from another firm that merged a couple of years ago or what have you, and their technology comes with them. So it's that, and that's a huge challenge in big firms. Like, how do you get the firm to work together when these different silos exist? Where are those silos appropriate and a strength to your business, and where is it actually eating into everybody's productivity or the quality of what the clients get into the day? I wanted to ask you, your career has been focused on contracts and contract management. I was hoping that maybe you could share a story or about some of the biggest challenges that you've faced in contract management over your career.
Yeah, yeah, plenty of them. I think one story that I could share comes from sort of very start of my career when I was working for a global manufacturing company, and was uh, part of a small team that was trying to put in place a relatively rudimentary sort of document management slash contract review solution that we're developing in house. Um, and it was intended to help initially, at least with non-disclosure agreements, because we just were dealing with a lot of them, and they were particularly tricky in some cases because we were dealing with companies that were um, either providing specific parts or manufacturing specific things for us in specific ways. And given the competitiveness of the industry, is really important for those NDAs to be very protective of our intellectual property. And so we were trying to help ourselves be better service providers by developing the solution to help with those NDAs. Um, However, what we realized through kind of jumping full on board with development was we'd skipped a really important part of the process, which was getting together user requirements, because we were thinking just kind of about ourselves since we were reviewing NDAs, but we didn't think so much about those people who were sending us these documents to review and what they were seeing and what they wanted to be interacting with, because we were trying to automate and help make things faster, but not just for ourselves, but also for our salespeople. And as a result of us kind of overlooking that initial step, we then realized that the solution we're building was one that for us made a lot of sense, but really wasn't making as much sense for others. And so wasn't likely going to be used as well for others. And because of that, it kind of ended up being not all that successful. And that was fine. We learned a lot about ourselves and about the process, but it really was a key lesson I learned earlier in my career, and I was glad to have learned it because it's something now that I talk about a lot, which is that before looking at potential solutions, you need to really understand your problem, and your problem encompasses more than just kind of the bottleneck itself, but those who are contributing to the problem or experiencing the problem. And you really got to understand that first before you move ahead to any other step, including, importantly, developing or looking at solutions.
What is a tool that you use when you're in that situation where you're trying to understand the problem or you're helping a team understand the problem and they're struggling?
It's a good question. There's no real, I wouldn't say there's any real tool aside from, frankly, just being an active listener, meaning reaching out to people and really listening to what they have to say and taking full stocks of what they share and not kind of anticipating what they're going to say and then responding, but more just really listening and taking it all in and then seeing what you're left with after you've done that. So I really think that the key first step in understanding problem is to kind of go on a listening tour of those who are experiencing this problem and how they describe it and how it's impacting them. And that helps you better understand both the problem as well as the perspectives on the problem from those who are experiencing it.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. You talk about something in the book, actually, I think that applies here and is very helpful, and that's the use of Six Sigma, which, for those that don't know, Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma, these are kind of disciplines for process improvement. But one section of it is on problem statements and how you can drill down a problem statement into something that is measurable, something you can test against, etc., something that's statistically sound. There's a lot that goes into it, and I think that could apply here. I was interested, since you brought Six Sigma up a couple of times in the book, is that something that you're familiar with? Did it just come from a couple of folks you interviewed?
So a bit of both. That came from something that came up during a bunch of interviews that I conducted, but also something that I have myself been interested in because I'm very much someone who is process oriented and interested in how processes work or don't work and how they can fall apart. And sort of problem identification and being able to test against something specific is really important because not only am I process oriented, I'm also data driven. And so in order for me to best help someone or best understand a problem, I need to have the data to understand what it is. And that, ties into Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma in terms of, figuring out what the problem is and being able to test against what it is. Because the way to learn, the way to improve, the way to come upon a solution is to test different ways of solving it and see whether it's solved or not. So that's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great story. I've definitely experienced when like mapping out processes and trying to come up with a solution that there's definitely parts of a process, a process being like several different pieces kind of connected together. You got inputs on one end, outputs on the other, but some of those pieces in the middle, the cogs as they were, are interchangeable with other processes that may be accomplishing completely different things for the business. And if I've seen where when that's not taken into consideration, those cogs become part of that automation. And so that interchangeability is, when you were talking, I was just thinking about something simple as like redlining, right? Like a firm that, there's lots of reasons why something may be redlined, not just contract, life cycle management when you're redlining contracts, but any pleadings or memos or briefs or what have you. There's red lines all over the place. So like trying to build some type of redlining process into the contract life cycle management tool that's separate from how anybody else in the firm may redline a document. I could see where that would be. It could be like when you look at it, it's like an efficiency because you save time in the clicks to get the redline document. But since it's a different redlining tool or process than what the rest of the firm uses, it's almost a waste or muda, right? So that I can see from my own experience, it's kind of that same thing has happened. I think that's a common trap that folks can fall into when they're doing this, when they're automating processes, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of different traps people can fall into, and something I talk about in the book, and something that you kind of allude to a little bit, is just sort of the shiny key syndrome of thinking that
Mm-hmm.
technology, just because it exists, means that it's going to be the answer, which is not
Right.
really always the case, if at all. Which goes back to the problem identification step, which is so critical. But in addition, you know, there's a variety of different ways of solving a problem, potentially using technology, which is why it's important to get to understand those who are going to be part of using any potential solution and have them be a part of evaluating potential solutions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because in my world of contract lifecycle management, but also in a lot of other worlds with legal tech, it's really important for the tech to be used. And the only way to, and one of the best ways to ensure this can be used is making users be a part of the process from day one.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, what will happen sometimes is the decision maker or purchaser will buy a piece of tech, think it's great, but then no one uses it because no one was a part of it, and they're just perfectly happy to use whatever tool they're currently using, if any, and don't really want to change because they have no ownership in the change itself.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well said.
It's time to stop thinking about your website like a car. Instead, think of it like a home, because you want it to be an asset. Like a home, assets appreciate in value. And that new car is going to lose a significant chunk of its value as soon as you drive it off the lot. Luckily, Name Creative is here to help you build your dream home. We will make your website appreciate over time, so you're able to publish quality, user-focused content at a high pace, own it, so it's yours to build and scale your business systems, be resilient to technology and security changes, keep it fast, safe, and secure with regular maintenance, and generate more leads. Contact us today at info@nameandcreative.com or visit our website at nameandcreative.com to get started.
Absolutely. I think DevOps has a lot to say about that. um, I love stories. I'd love to hear a win. Can you share a story of how you've seen technology improve a firm's operations?
Yeah.
And I keep saying firms because I so often am talking about law firms, but of course, with you being in-house counsel, I suppose I should say a firm or legal department.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't specifically name the company, but what I can speak to is the fact that, we have worked with um, a really large company in sort of the health space, if you will. And they've got a lot of complicated processes and a lot of um not just complicated processes, but complicated documents as well. And so in working with them, not only have us working with them been able to help and allow them to automate the management of a lot of these processes and documents, but also, quite frankly, they contribute to the development of new functionality that we now offer to other customers in our solution. And so that's really the beauty, I think, in many ways of how I and also how Malbec works is we really, I and them are really keen on developing collaborations with others to not just help them solve problems, but help them collaborate and develop new tools to solve future problems. So not just being reactive to existing problems, but being proactive as well to
Mm-hmm.
prevent future problems from arising. And that's been an ongoing sort of theme, I'd say, in terms of my work with Malbec, but also in terms of tech that I see as being successful is tech that doesn't just solve a problem, but also helps contribute to future tools that can prevent other problems from occurring down the line. Because I think in this age where tech is so much a part of our lives and the world is so dynamic and so fluid, we need to be able to be proactive And we can't just operate in a reactive mode, which traditionally has been how lawyers have operated in terms of client comes to us with a problem, we help with the problem and move on. That's not really what's going to work the majority of the time these days. We have to be proactive. Clients are wanting people to be proactive as much as they want them to be reactive.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That resonates with me. It's like essential in like customer experience and many other disciplines that like the measure of reactive versus proactive it's like a benchmark for maturity. And just that statement alone doesn't do justice to a lot of businesses reactive in its nature. It's just transactional and reactive, and we understand that. But the kind of overall strategy of a business, right, and moving into that proactive approach is, I think, a great measure of maturity.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard. Look, I get it. It's easier to be reactive all the time. And certainly I have been earlier in my life more reactive than proactive, but being proactive allows you to not have to be as reactive down the line because you're preventing problems from arising that you have to react to. And that way you're helping yourself and others as well. And it goes to, I think, another key theme that I mentioned in the book, but also, frankly, just believe in myself personally as well as professionally, which is just being someone who's open to change and open to adapting and being open to always learning new things and not being content to kind of just be happy with what exists now and what you know now and seeking to grow, because I think it's incumbent upon all of us to be dynamic, to meet the needs of the world today, but also to live, frankly, in the world of today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Colin, you've got a great network on LinkedIn, lots of thought leaders and very impressive and well-educated and creative people. So you're exposed to a lot of different tech startups, a lot of different solutions and things in the market. We're recording this in December. The end of the year is coming up. So I thought it would be fun to hear what innovations have excited you the most over the past year.
That's it. It's a good question. I think certainly generative artificial intelligence continues to be an exciting one. Continues to be, I think, really fun to play around with. But I think what I am most excited about, and something that we're just starting to explore, is generative AI solutions that are multimodal, meaning that they're not just providing text or imagery or audio, but ones that can do all of those things at the same time. Ones that can provide you with, an audio, a video or something or a podcast episode even, or something else. I think we're going to see more of that going forward with generative AI, and it's going to be increasingly powerful and able to do more rather than just provide sort of text-based response. So that's certainly one thing that I'm excited about, and that's been exciting to me this year. I think another thing that's been exciting to me over the course of this year has been just the growth I've seen of the legal tech space, both in terms of tools, but also in terms of people. I'm always eager to grow and support the community. And it's been exciting for me to see more and more people wanting to learn about it, wanting to connect with me and others about it, and wanting to, be a part of this. Because I see it as more than just sort of a community, but also sometimes also frankly a movement of people that are trying to make the legal industry better suited to the needs of today and tomorrow rather than the needs of yesterday. So that's another exciting thing, and I expect I'll see that as a theme through 2025 as well, as much as generative AI will likely continue to dominate the headlines. So those two things for me are probably the really exciting. And I'm sure there will be other exciting things happening next year that I am not expecting to see, and that's going to be fun.
Awesome. Yeah, generative AI is certainly a hype, but it's a little scary too, right? I mean, I see on LinkedIn, one judge in particular comes up in my mind that often talks about the dangers of generative AI when it comes to evaluating evidence in court.
Yeah, I mean, look, generative AI is not not the answer to everything and is imperfect. But that's been the case for any type of technology. Humans are imperfect, so we can't expect technology created by humans um, to be perfect. So we'll see. But there's certainly, I think, a lot to be excited about. But also a lot to learn about, and a lot to kind of be cautious when using as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What are your predictions for 2025?
Oh, I hate giving predictions because I feel like it's a question that comes up every year at this time, and it's always difficult. I think what I can say is, an easy to make prediction is we're going to continue to see growth of generative AI. That's an easy enough low-hanging fruit prediction. Beyond that, I think that we will see greater sort of scrutiny of technologies, particularly those that rely on generative AI, because I think we've seen enough stories as it is to warrant that this year. So that certainly is something I think we'll see going forward next year. And then lastly, I think we're going to see a growing of the tension between figuring out what's actually real and what's been artificially created. And I think that's going to continue to be a tension we're going to have to navigate, particularly as I said earlier about generative AI being able to create video that looks like it's real and looks like it involves real people. And that's going to be something that I think of concern to a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. As far as the technology over the recent year that's exciting and predictions for the future, some of the things that come up for me as far as exciting is the kind of more well-funded or more successful developers out there that have acquired some of the smaller, developers that have really nice tools, and then how that changes how they go to market. Over the past year, especially earlier on, I was struck by a lot of these kind of more startup tools as far as how expensive they could be, or how hard it was to get involved when you're like a solo practitioner or a small firm. But I've seen where, as some of them have been acquired by other groups, their capabilities are becoming more accessible for solo practicing attorneys. And that really excites me. I'll give an example. Reveal is, well known in like the e-discovery space, right? And one of the neat things about their technology when it comes to e-discovery, it's kind of any e-discovery platform out there. It's going to take evidence, a bunch of documents, take a bunch of images of these documents. It's going to OCR these documents, index it so you can search it and you can tag it, organize that way. But not many of them do that with audio files, but Reveal will do it with audio files, where when the audio files come in and it's processing the files, it transcribes them using AI, not generative AI, but AI, to create those transcriptions kind of in the same or very similar way as what kind of OCR does for a document. And so now you're searching those audio transcripts, creating tags and things off them too. But that Reveal platform is not really a solo firm tool. It's not really thought of as that way. It's more of the bigger firms' tools. But Reveal bought Logical, which is kind of more seen as an e-discovery tool for the solo practitioners, for the small firms. It does not currently have the capability to do that with audio files, but I bet it's a good bet to say that it will in the future now that Reveal's bought them. And that stuff excites me when I can see technology tried and tested, and then the entry point kind of like, or entry price is brought down a little bit so that some of the smaller outfits can get access to it. And, it's my belief that just, closes the access to justice gap.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that gets overlooked a lot, or not enough attention, are technologies and legal that are aimed at small legal departments or smaller firms that really can help with a lot of sort of the time-consuming work that takes away from their ability to grow and earn revenue. Administrative work, like intaking clients or reviewing documents or
Mm-hmm.
putting together, a basic form or filling out a form. These technologies exist and they are very helpful. And as much as I'm a big fan of kind of the larger technology solutions that exist, I think equally exciting are those that are aimed at sort of these smaller shops that do really great work and are very good at what they do and are impactful. And as you mentioned, helping to make accessing legal support and resources less time consuming and costly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I want to turn back to something that came up earlier when we were talking about the ecosystem and the conferences, and you said you have some resources there. That would be fun to talk about for a minute. My involvement is, as far as the circles I run in, is ILTA and the ILTACon, or International Legal Technology Association. That's really where I find other legal tech folks, or I have over the years before I became more active on LinkedIn, following your great example. ALA for, kind of the business side or staff side of law, your human resources directors, office managers, etc. CIO.legal is a business partner there. And then just recently sponsored the Florida Bar's solo and small firm section. If any of you are coming to the EC meeting in February in Orlando, you'll see me there. But these are the circles that I kind of run in for, my access to my clients and legal tech gurus, as it were. What would you add to that list, and which ones which conferences do you go? I'm sure there's some that are more for kind of legal departments and in-house counsel, right?
Yeah. So I think the ones that, I tend to go to are, Clock in Vegas. One I want to go to next year that I've heard good things about is Run Legal Like a Business, also focused on legal ops. ACC has some great events as well that are primarily aimed at in-house counsel because it's the Association of Corporate Counsel. And Clio always puts on a great event as well. And actually next year it's going to be in my hometown of Boston. So I hope to go because it's going to be
That's wonderful.
Close to me. So those are events that I would suggest people and they're always, there are a variety of styles of events too. Those are some of the bigger events, but there also are other ones that are more focused on more narrow constituencies. And so I think it's more a matter of just kind of finding the right group for you where you feel the most connected and get the most out of.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I've heard a lot about, you said, I think it was CLOC. Is that the Consortium of Legal Operations?
Yeah, that's CLOC. So that's that Corporate Legal Operations Consortium that do a big event in Vegas every year.
Awesome. Yeah, Clio, I might see you there. They tried to get me to come to Austin this year. I just couldn't make it work, but I'm looking forward to ClioCon next year. Really hoping to go there. And fun story, I'm actually going to have someone from Clio on next month's episode, Joshua Lennon. He's their in-house counsel, and he'll be coming onto the podcast.
That should be a great discussion.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, if you can think of any questions I could surprise him with, shoot them to me in our LinkedIn chat. I'm excited to have him on to talk about his legal tech survey he's been doing for several years. It's a lot of cool tools there. I used it not too long ago to help a firm benchmark. And if you don't know what that is, look me up at CIO.legal. How would folks get in touch with you, Colin, if they want to follow you and read some of your articles?
Yeah, so two ways. One is on LinkedIn. I have a legal tech newsletter that you can subscribe to for free on LinkedIn called Notes on Legal Tech. So that's one way. The other way is to check out my blog and reach out for a more personalized connection via my website, colinslevy.com. That's COLINSLEVY.com. And of course, if you want to check out my book, it's available on Amazon worldwide.
Wonderful. It's been so nice having you on, Colin. Thank you so much for joining me today. And Sun listeners, we'll see you out there. Keep coming back. There's more hosts than just me, and we talk about a lot of different things here on the Sun Leaders podcast. Of course, you can look out for my episodes third Thursday of every month, where I talk about legal technology, operations, and service management. If you're a solo practicing attorney or a small firm administrator, there's a lot for you on my podcast. But if you're an entrepreneur or any Sun listener out there, you would find a lot from some of our other podcast hosts as well. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope you have a wonderful day.